What is this very big trade deal that US is talking about with India? Why does India really need a bilateral trade agreement with US immediately? What are the major roadblocks for which India is not ready to let go when negotiating a deal with US? And finally, what is India looking at if there is no trade agreement that comes forward? After brokering another ceasefire, President Donald Trump has finally turned his attention to the trade deals and the tariffs that he has been talking about ever since he entered the office. And now he has hinted that there will be a very big trade deal, especially with India, just after he has closed a trade bilateral agreement with China. Now this becomes important for us because US is the largest trading partner in our last financial year, and here we're closing a deal is imminent. Reason being, we'll have tariffs looking in front of us and they are going to impact our foreign trade, especially with the US, quite badly. Hello everyone, welcome to Vajiram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh and today we are going to understand the trade relations of India and US, the deal that we are looking forward to, what are the major roadblocks and negotiations taking place, as well as what is the way forward and implications in front of us. So let us begin with the trade relation that we share with US. As I have already mentioned that US happens to be our largest trading partner in the last fiscal year, where the total bilateral trade stood somewhere around $132 billion, and India's exports to US, they have also grown by 11.6%, that is almost $86.51 in billion dollars. Now, in this whole situation, the favorable thing is India is in a trade surplus. Now, this is a good news for us that we are in a trade surplus, but the problematic part will lies with the US, that they are in the trade deficit, and that is one of the major reasons that President Donald Trump was not happy with the trade relations and the tariffs that he has with other countries and also India. He did say that we are, especially in context with our Prime Minister, that they are good friends, but India is in way reaping off US, and that's not correct. And that is why he also placed reciprocal tariffs of 26% on the Liberation Day in April 2. Now that was done back in April, but after the imposition of reciprocal tariffs, there was a 90 days pause that was decided, and this pause is about to end on July 9. So that is why, because after this, the tariffs will remain intact if there is no deal that we look forward to, and the surplus we are enjoying, the exports that are helping our bills, that is helping us earn foreign currency, all this might suffer very badly. If you want to understand in detail what tariffs are, there is one video which you can go and watch so that you have a clear understanding of this topic as well. Now, if the exports will get expensive because of tariffs, our exports will suffer, so will our trade with US. Now, let us look into the key Indian exports and key Indian imports that we are seeing from US. So, if we talk about pharma, telecom instruments, gems and jewelry, petroleum products, these are four biggest exports that happen from India, and if a trade deal is negotiated and finalized, these are the sectors which are expected to have the benefit out of this deal. Then if we talk about the major imports that we are getting from US, basically the items US exports to India, we have crude oil, coal, aircraft and parts, gold machinery and agro products. Now these are the things that are essential for our economy in terms of raw material, and we are also dependent in certain level. Even though we have bifurcated our resources, we have diversified our resources, but we have to understand whenever we are talking about trade partnership, you can't just export products to them, you have to facilitate their products also coming to your economy as well. So now that we have a clear understanding what the trade relations look like, let's straight away move to what is this new deal that we are looking forward to. So as of now, Donald Trump has only hinted on the very big trade deal. We always have to remember the fact that it is President Donald Trump that we are talking about. Things might materialize, things might not materialize, just like he says in the tweets itself. Now, you also need to understand when we are talking about this trade deal that what is the background to it. So, if we talk about the backstory of this whole this whole sequence, it started on April 2, Liberation Day, where Donald Trump, with his board that you see in front, announced reciprocal tariffs on almost all of his trade partners. Initially, he was focusing excessively on China, where we seemingly saw a brief tariff war as well, which continued in different forms until they arrived at a particular deal that we will be talking about later. But on this day, he announced specifically for India, he said that there will be imposition of 26% of reciprocal tariffs because India apparently puts 52% of tariffs on the US exports to India. Now that would have made our export oriented industries, especially the major exports to US, those industries suffer heavily, and because of that finally a pause was given, 90-day pause was given. And now that 90-day pause is about to end, it becomes important to understand where we are standing in terms of tariffs if the deal is not negotiated. So as of now, it has been said that there will be definitely a 10% base tariff that is not going anywhere, that has been mandated. However, if the deal is negotiated, we are expecting to get off without this as well. So now let us move ahead and see the ongoing talks and what are the basic negotiation pointers on which the deal will be finalized and what are we looking towards, right? The ongoing talks are being headed by an Indian team which is led by Rajesh Agarwal, who is basically the special secretary in the Department of Commerce. So similarly, US side representatives are also present there, and what they are trying to do, they are trying to come with a bilateral trade agreement between US and India. Now, this bilateral trade agreement that they have to finalize within a deadline, that means before July 9, this will be a limited bilateral trade agreement, more like it would be done in phases, but we need to finalize something for phase 1. So, before the deadline actually comes in front of us, we have something in our hand. So, a limited bilateral trade agreement in front of us, and it would be just the first phase. But gradually phases will be brought out, and what is the final target? That the trade between both of these countries by 2030 should reach to $500 billion, which as of now, as per last year financials, it stands around $182 billion. So this is the aim that they are trying to achieve through the ongoing talks. Now let us look into the things that are on table, especially from US side. So there are certain things that US is clearly demanding. First thing, lower tariffs. US has this fundamental basis of trade that it is looking into its own economic interests. So they have asked lower tariffs on dairy and agriculture with special emphasis on soy, apples, corn, ethanol, then automobiles and EVs, and alcoholic beverages. So all these exports coming from US, what they have demanded that there should be lower tariffs. That's not all. US wants more on the table. They want market access. That market should be open for genetically modified crops which are coming from US. It should be open to remanufactured goods and multi-brand retail. For example, when we are talking about Amazon, Walmart, these are examples of multi-brand retail. And US is also looking forward to that FDI liberalization in retail as well as services. So if you look at the FDI, that is through direct approval route, is limited in terms of retail and service. Can you tell me in the comment section that what is the percentage of FDI that is allowed through open route directly for retail and services? But this is being expected from India. that US wants all of these things on table. But we have to understand that the problem herein is that especially the dairy and agricultural lower tariff, because that will make our primary sector suffer, which itself, it does produce more, but the producers are not paid well, and it will affect our primary sector, it will affect our producers, farmers. So this is something India is not totally in favor of. But now let us move and look into the things that India is demanding from US. So India is saying that first of all, you need to directly remove the reciprocal tariffs that you talked about. Remove that. Then only we can get on speaking terms about the other deal. Then there is tariff relief that is expected by India on textiles, gems and jewelry, shrimp and leather. Other than that, India is also looking towards market access, that there should be better market access for products like pharmaceuticals, chemicals and plastic goods. So when you talk about pharmaceuticals, they are already the biggest, one of the biggest export items. And here India also gets edge because we are competing with Chinese exports to US also. So whenever, if the Chinese export is restricted, it opens the space for India to enter, and this is an opportunity also if this deal is actually finalized. Furthermore, India is looking for protection for MSP regime and digital economy, that there should be proper data localization, other than that sovereign data norms, so that we are able to protect our data, and the structure or framework should be such that there is possibility of digital norms, digital rule order as well as digital sovereignty for India. Apart from that, one thing that we have to clearly understand, the major roadblock that is between these negotiations, it remains to be the dairy and agriculture, because we are that country which is still trying to support the primary sector, the farmers through MSP. There is a lot of sensitivity which is involved, and this is something that India has clearly refused to open. However, another thing that India is not very keen to address is the GM crops and deeper tariff cuts, but US is not budging for this. So these are two non-negotiables you can see that are present from both sides, but once a finalized deal at least comes in for the first phase, we will be able to see that what are things that India is ready to let go and what are the things that US is also ready to let go. Now that we have understood that what is on the negotiation table, let us move and talk about what are the implications. First implication, we have to understand that if actually a deal works out, if the negotiations finally end up with a final bilateral trade agreement, then it will definitely facilitate Indian exports, especially in labor intensive sectors, be it pharma, be it gems and jewelry, and these are already doing very well in terms of exports to US. Once the deal is finalized, it will also strengthen investor sentiment, and the investment in terms of FDI will also increase to sectors such as manufacturing, energy and services. Apart from that, this will open doors for pharma, electronics, engineering goods. Why? Because the export, which is already high in these categories, once it becomes part of the trade agreement, they will be further facilitated. Apart from that, we also have to consider that if the deal does not succeed, what are we looking at? Apart from that, we will also get to see that there will be enhancement in terms of India's geo-economic positioning, especially with our neighbor China, which is an all-weather ally with our different neighbor Pakistan. So when we are looking at a better economic positioning, especially with US, this bilateral trade agreement puts us in a better place. And this will be a positive sign for global investor that there are rules-based trade predictability. There will be no surprises in terms of trade that would be expected, especially with our largest trade partner. But there are chances that this deal might not succeed. Then what are the implications we are looking on that particular front? So herein there is a possibility that US may reimpose tariffs, the reciprocal tariffs we were talking about, and there is no guarantee that it will be just 26% only. Then we are talking about India's micro, small and medium enterprises. They would be heavily affected because the biggest exports that we are talking that go to US, they come from MSMEs, be it gems, be it auto parts, garments, etc. So they are going to see a big dent here. It is further going to worsen the trade relations when we are talking about with US in key sectors, and when we are talking about the mutual trust that we have been building, especially on strategic issues with US, that is going to be undermined. So when we are talking about the deal not working out, then definitely the situation seems difficult to handle in terms of economic parameters. But what is the way forward? What can we do as an economy to prioritize ourselves? So at this point of time, there is a balance that is required between market access but also protecting domestic interest. So when we are negotiating with US, we are balancing this also, that we need better penetration, but at the same time we are focusing on protecting our own domestic countries as well. And when we are talking about a policy space through this particular agreement, we want this policy space where we are keeping certain things like the digital economy, farm subsidies, FDI regulations, and we are able to finalize these especially on our term because they are very much needed. Apart from that, we also have to push for reciprocal gains, not just tariff relief. So when we are talking about reduction in tariff by US, then we also have to look for reciprocal gains. If US can talk about reciprocal tariffs, we should be an equated position partner and we should be talking about reciprocal gains as well. At the same time, it is very important that we bring in a consensus at home, be it about states, farmers and MSMEs, to a situation which is helpful to all of these. However, if we talk about this deal not working out, there is also a possibility that there will be a mini deal which leaves us time for better negotiations before July 9th, so that tariffs are not put in place, but there is a mini deal that comes out with the dictation. The broader agreement may come later, we can see that. And the most important thing would be Trump's election rhetoric, basically where he talked about making America great again, facilitating US's interest at the primary pace. This might influence the deal in terms of the pace as well as in terms of the tone, which we have to watch out for. Now that was all from my side. Now my question to you is, what are the sectors that are expected to boom that if the deal happens, and why? You can put that down in the comment section. I'll wait for your answers. If you have any doubts or concerns, you can also put that in the comment section. That was all from my side. Thank you so much.